Hey everyone, Greg Benson here, and if you're a regular listener of the Speakeasy, you probably know by now that I've been working to bring 100% pure, actually good tasting agave nectar to the United States for a minute. But I wanted to give you a bit of an update. I actually got to travel to the farm where these amazing plants have been growing for decades, and it was just a genuinely moving experience. I got to see these agave in their natural habitat and see what it means to Rogelio, the farmer, to be able to care for the descendants of the same agave that his grandfather was growing almost a full century ago. That's why I'm proud to announce Quixote Imports, a new venture that's dedicated to preserving these agave and, yes, still bringing in the same fantastic, earthy, lightly fruity agave nectar that's going to make you wonder why you've been wasting your time with the crap at the grocery store. Plus, our fans here at the Speakeasy can get free shipping at checkout with promo code SPEAKEASY, so don't wait. Head on over to quixoteimports.com and see what agave nectar is actually supposed to taste like, and use promo code SPEAKEASY for free shipping. Salud.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that sand. It's gonna get you, son, in the end.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson. And guys, this is our first show of December. Thanksgiving is in the rearview mirror. The last hurdle has been cleared. We are full on balls to the wall holiday season. And I'm very excited because I have the biggest fan of hot cocktails that I know personally here on this show, my friend Sother Teague. Sother, how excited are you for hot toddy season?
What are you talking about? Is this something you're just making up as you go?
Of course, it's live radio, man. You're supposed to yes and me. That's the first rule of improv.
Yes,
here.
Greg. And I've already got a hot mulled cider on the menu at Gus's. Have had it since before Thanksgiving, pal. You know me and my affinity for hot cocktails. Yeah.
I will still never forget the time that Yelp or some other shitty app said that Amore and Margot was one of the best places in New York City to get mulled wine.
Mulled wine.
Yes.
Yeah, we've never had a drop of wine at that bar, much less mulled. We're also out there. The internet never gets cleaned up is the problem. Amore Margot is still out there as having two things that it's never had: oysters on the half shell. People come in still and they'll ask for them from time to time. And then the one that's the most like eye-blinkingly ridiculous is the pool table. So anytime anyone walks into that tiny bar and asks where the pool table is, our standard response as a team is it's out for service, which is not a thing that they do. Which is not a thing they do. If your pool table needs service, they service it right where it stands. But then I just sort of gesture at the space at how small it is that the pool table literally wouldn't fit in there. There's no cleaning up the internet.
But in all seriousness, though, I mean, I'm not here to stomp on anybody's good time. I fully respect people that like their cocktails hot and their coffee cold. I respect their opinions, but they are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But Damon, you're usually a font of joy on this show. Where do you stand on the whole hot toddy, hot cocktail thing? It's time. What do you feel about them?
I actually like hot cocktails. I really do.
I knew it. The man loves joy, everybody.
Yeah, I wish I still drink coffee so I could have. I live in San Francisco. I go to the Buena Vista Cafe and have an Irish coffee, but still, I love mulled wine and I love hot buttered rum and like everything. So to me, I also used to have a bar regular who would come in during the summer and order hot coffee, and in the winter would order iced coffee. Hot with hot, cold. Makes sense, like
temperature regulation. I don't know what
temperature regulation. Yeah, I mean, it's like tea punch when you're in, Martinique. It's like you don't put ice in it. It's like, why would you do that? But yeah, I like hot cocktails.
This is one of those cases where, like, I really the motivations behind this are going to drastically affect my opinion of this person, because if that's just the way they like it, like if they just like hot coffee in the summertime and they like cold coffee in the wintertime because that's just it makes them feel good, I'm like, fuck yeah, man, you do you. If they're doing it as some sort of like biohacking, like homeostasis way, then like
right.
fuck that guy. Like,
Right.
Well, enough about that. Let's bring in our guest, Greg.
yeah,
buddy.
let's do it. Yeah, speaking about hot climates and cool drinks, joining us today from Kilinga, Bacanora, we have Rodrigo Bojorquez. Rodrigo, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's great to have you here. So this is probably a good segue into what you do and where you are for our listeners, because Bacanora is one of these kind of more up and coming categories that I think people probably aren't, chapter and verse on. Where are you based? Where are you coming to us live from right now?
Now we're in Obregón, Sonora, Mexico. That's this city is about an hour and a half north from where we make our Bacanora, which is in the town of Alamos. It's that town is closer to the mountains, to the mountain range, the Sierra Madre. So it's the climate there is like a bit different. Um, it's where the desert sort of gives to the mountains. So the the flora there and it's a bit different because of the climate, basically.
Cool.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that, because I want to kind of, before we get too deep into what you're doing at Kilinga and this this very fun little bottle that you sent me over here. I want to kind of talk a little bit, give our listeners a quick primer of what Bacanora is, because as I mentioned, it's not one of these categories that I think is super widely known yet. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how the climate where you are, that sort of foothills where the desert meets the mountain thing, how that affects the spirit, because that's a very different climate than you have in Jalisco, or that you have in Oaxaca, or that you have in most other parts of Mexico. So talk to us a little bit about the effect that has on the final product.
Well, the most significant difference that I think Bacanora in specific Kilinga has is that it's closest to the ocean, to the Sea of Cortez. It's a body of water that it's mostly warm during the year, and so this warm ocean and very hot weather creates sort of like not sort of but like misting effect. So it evaporates some of the oceanic water, and that mist comes into through the flatlands, through the valley, and stops in the mountains. So it has that a mineral salinity to it that makes it or sets it apart from other Bacanora expressions. And so it sits a little bit higher, but it's only 45 meters above sea level. So it's what about 16 miles away from the shoreline, the land that we plant the agaves. So we have we can only work with one kind of agave, which is Cipolla pacifica or yaquiana. It can be called either or. And so we get to work with that one special agave, and it's a close relative to the espadín that grows throughout Mexico, but it's changed enough to adapt to survive in the extreme weathers that we have. That it changed the profile and that it can give in the palate and the nose. So we have that specific agave here that thrives in the wild, and so we started to cultivate it because there isn't, well, it's a desert environment, so there's very little water, so it doesn't thrive as much and in the wild as and as into sustain an industry from it, we would have depleted the wild agaves long ago. And a lot of the difference as well is in the profiles that we get in our distilleries because of the soil itself. It has like what in it's called terroir, I think, in wines. It has a unique minerality to the soil as well that nourishes the plant and accentuates different aspects of it. And Bacanora is has been around for around a little bit more than 300 years, and it's been traditionally made for special occasions like weddings and christenings and like like family reunions and all that. It's a very traditional. It's rooted in the Sonora culture for the more than 3 centuries now, and it's not well known because it was banned. Actually, it was illegal to make Bacanora up until 1995. It was banned from. There was a provision from 1915 to 1995, and but there were still families that carried on the tradition, made it for like their own family circle. And when they lifted the ban, we well, there's people that were already doing it, and I came on board as out of a mere curiosity, in because I had bacanoras that I didn't quite enjoy, and I had one that I really enjoyed, and I discovered that like that specific point in my life that I said, "Wow!" I couldn't believe that it could taste like that. That it could be so elegant and bright and just like so, for lack of better words, like colorful in your mouth. It was a beautiful thing, and I really enjoyed it, and I got into learning how to care for the agave plants first, and then I got to learn how to distill. And it's been quite a journey. But Bacanora is special because of that, and Kilinga well, I consider it special because I'm the first generation. I'm a first generation distiller. I don't have to play around that set of rules that my ancestors had put in place for me. That you have to do it a certain way. So I get to play around with what I do quite a bit, and I've come up with some interesting expressions for it.
Interesting. So what are you doing that's kind of that's different that you would view as a little bit more rule breaking that you're working on right now?
Well, it's not very usual to have añejos and reposados in Bacanora. It's usually blanco. In mezcal is very unusual to have somebody work on an añejo or a reposado. And I worked on a repo in a ways of in a different approach. Like if you would be seasoning a dish, I enjoy cooking as well. So I didn't want to do it at first, but a good friend of mine that helps me run this suggested that I should go ahead and tackle making a reposado. I took better part of 2 years to come up with it, but I sort of looked at it as like a seasoned bacanora, but it's seasoned with different kinds of barrels, like X rum barrels, X bourbon barrels, and X wine barrels. So
Mhm.
I came to realizing that those were the traits in the flavor that I liked the most, and I sort of got them together in different ways in order to have them play well with each other, and it's a very pleasant experience in the palate.
Well, that seems like a good excuse enough to open up the bottle that you sent me. By the way, this has been living unopened in my apartment for about 4 months now. I got it over the summer,
Yeah.
but I didn't open it. Well, for you scoff, Sother, but in a way, it's kind of your fault. Because remember how you ate over 250 oysters at Tales of the Cocktail and you were totally fine?
Yes.
And I had 6, and one of them put me in the hospital for a
That's right.
fucking week.
Yes.
That was the week that this arrived. So it sort of flew under my radar until
Got
then.
it.
So I'm very excited to have my first experience trying it right now.
Well, while you're cracking that open, Rodrigo, talk to us a little bit about like the difference in the construction or distilling process of mezcal and Bacanora, because they seem to be at face value pretty similar. And then I would love to touch a little bit more on why was this centuries old product that had all this colloquial history, why was it banned until 1995 and then only given an origin statement in 2000? So talk about like how it's made in comparison to something where the listeners a little bit more familiar with mezcal, so maybe compared to that, because I know it's pretty similar, and then talk about a little bit why it was banned in the first place.
Okay, well, the word itself, mezcal, it's in Nahuatl. It refers to a cooked agave or roasted agave. So basically, that's the generic word to call a distillate that comes from a cooked agave. So Bacanora is a mezcal, but it's the difference. The difference in the naming is because of the region that it's made. In the process that we use particularly is that the roasting pits are different. The ones we use look like a barbacoa pit. If you're familiar with that, it's a cylinder that it's lined with a volcanic rock and clay, and it roasts differently. It ends up without being that without having that pungent smoke that it tastes like a little bit burnt sometimes. So that's one difference. And also the in Kilinga in particular, we do a 2-step milling process where I chop the cooked agave into smaller pieces and then put it into a tahona. There is a reason for that. I used to not do that, but the reason for the tahona is that it exerts downward pressure, and then as it turns, if you would see the agave fibers like that, as it turns, it'll crush them and then separate them like that. That's in those small crevices that are created. The yeast can go in and work on those. We also distill with the bagasse, the fibers of the agave. The first run is done with those, and then we do a correction run or a second run. Excuse me, which were the end result of that second run you can call Bacanora. It's 2 times distilled. But the main difference between a Bacanora and a mezcal is the terroir and the type of agave. It's a whole different animal, and it's very generous because of the harsh climate that it grows in. It's generous, and it has in the back, even besides the floral and herbal notes, it has like a sweet hue that lingers in the back of your palate, which makes it very unique. And that's one of the aspects that I enjoy the most. That subtle sweetness that it's left behind. That it's just hits me right on the spot. And in the history of this, it's been written as we speak. It's being written as we speak. But I recently read that the Plutarco Elias Calles, which was the governor at that time, the governor of Sonora, he had a thing with Bacanora because his troops would go up into the mountains, would get really cheap liquor, get all liquored up, and wouldn't function, I guess, as well as they should. And to keep the peace or keep everybody in check. So he up and decided to just ban it. And then he came and went, and nobody really put attention to any of the details in order to make it come back until 1995. It was just
Got it.
a drink that we all knew that existed. We all knew that it was made in the higher part of the state of Sonora, up in the mountains where the cops couldn't get in there and mess you up or arrest you or anything like that. So it's sort of the similar to the bootlegging history in the States with the whiskey, right? With the green whiskey. Was it bourbon?
Moonshine.
I don't want to. Yeah, the moonshine. I don't want to mess that up because I'm not knowledgeable on that history. But the little bit the bit I read of around that, the moonshine legacy, it's very similar to what happened here. There was people that got shot at, killed, and they were. If you made that, you were a criminal. So the authorities went after you, and so we had a lot of that for several years, and then yeah, you were a bandido, and so it stayed like that until
You've correctly
1995.
identified the bandito on this show. That's right.
Yeah. So it stayed like that, and now that we have a shot at working with this beautiful thing, I got to discover it. I got to discover where it comes from, where the plants, how they work, and understand them, and then understand the basics on distilling, and then went up and once I understood enough about distilling, I went ahead and did sort of my own thing. And because I just wanted to have a very elegant version of a Bacanora, something that is very appealing, pleasing to the palate, and it's well balanced, and it's nice enough to be sipping on and be very enjoyable. And then I got to meet new people in my life that are really into cocktails, and they began to fixing beautiful cocktails with it. And now I'm a cocktail fan. So I really enjoy cocktails now.
I've seen it pop up on a lot of menus, cocktail menus lately, in drinks, and over the past year, I guess, or so, and I've just noticed it everywhere. And I was wondering, were there any existing bottles or samples that were still around from the pre-ban days, from like pre-19, you said 1950?
1995.
Or like before it was banned. I'm talking like very, very old. So you can make a comparison between the two, or kind of something to work with.
I would really have to look into it, but they would usually store them in big glass jars or ceramic jars, and people would bury them, and like out in the wild. So whenever the army or the cops came by your ranch and tried to bust you on it, they couldn't find anything, and because it was usually made in the middle of nowhere. And once you got a batch done, you would go out and like you'd use a marker like a rock on a mountain or something like that, and just to do a cross marking reference and geographical reference, and then bury it there. And then after months or even years, you would go back and find it. So
buried treasure.
I would have to look into it, but the first one I had, I could tell it was done the old way because it was in a big glass jar. They have any labels on it. It's just a big jug, and the gentleman that introduced me to it, he said, "Oh, it's made in such and such ranch," and so it is made by the people the ranch hands, the people that work there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, let's try some. Let's get into it.
I'm about 20 minutes ahead of you, Damon, and
Oh
I
no,
got to
I've tried.
admit, yeah, I got to admit, I was stunned by you. You mentioned the kind of subtle sweetness that's at the end of this thing. A lot of the Bacanoras that I've tried appeal to a certain cortex in my brain that really loves spirits that taste like you just broke off a hunk of blackboard and are just chewing that like slate, that just kind of like granite, just very dusty flavor. So I was really stunned by all the kind of like sweeter, fruitier flavors in this thing. And Damon, I want to hear what you thought, but I also kind of want to drill down on something that you said earlier, Rodrigo. You mentioned that this plant that Bacanora comes from is technically the same species as espadín that makes mezcal. It's an angustifolia agave, but it is a wildly different flavor. I remember I was at an agave festival earlier this year, and someone was talking about they did a tasting panel where just to fuck with people, they made all of the different spirits different variations of angustifolia just grown in different parts of the country of Mexico. And we're like, what species do you think these are? And people were pulling out all kinds of like wild, weird, like obscure breeds. And at the end, they were like, it's just all espadín, guys. It goes by a bunch of different names, but I think that's also a testament to the fact that like where you're growing it and what you're doing with it produces these kind of like aloe, almost like stone fruity flavors that I'm kind of getting off of this thing.
Well, the soil and the climate have a lot to do with it, and it's an espadín. Well, before I get into that, it's sort of I explained it like this once. If you're gonna have like Napa Valley Cabernet and Cabernet grown in Chile or Argentina or France, they're all gonna be different. Very different soil, very different climate, latitudes, and everything. It affects it that much. It affects it that much. And it's but the espadín that we grow here, it's evolved enough to set itself like a subspecies of the same espadíns. Like the main genetics of it are the same as the espadín, but it has its own differences. It's like you and your cousins, they have like almost the same genes, but there's a little bit like they crossbred with different people. Here's crossbred with different other agaves. And what I found very interesting once, I found it interesting when I found out about it, is that when we grow our agaves from seed, so that's a long ass process that takes a decade or so. But I discovered that when I planted the seeds on the ground in the nursery, I would have from the same plant I would have different looking agaves, and I got studying like reading into that, and I had a conversation with people that know they're botanists and stuff, and they said that's because their main pollinator is a bat. In the fur of that bat, there's different pollen of different agaves of different varietals. So, and they crossbreed with the same plant, and every flower is a different pod. So it comes to be a different genetic cross in that one pod. So from one mother can be different strands. So that's part of what I want to. Well, we as a company now are making an effort to conserve, because that variety of genetics that we have there, that genetic pool is a lot to do with very different nuances that our drink has. So we don't go up and clone everything like very big productions do. We still do it in that how nature intended it to be.
Yeah, very cool. Very natural. And there's a lot of like, I just tried the Blanco, and there's like dare I say this? There's like a florality to these.
You dare do it.
There's like very floral, in fruit, and it's like when I first smelled this, I was like, I'm on the Sylvester now, but there's like a floral kind of almost like pisco, you know? It's like it's got like a
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's got florality and fruit, and it's like it's like somewhere. It's like you're talking about the cousins. It's like almost like they could be, you know, related in some ways. The Bacanora and the Pisco, and it's just really cool. And now the second one, the Silvestre, it's like I'm getting even more of that. Like really kind of like there's so much lushness on, you know, on the nose, and it's just they're really cool. This is actually I got to tell you, this is my first time tasting Bacanora on its own. Like I said, I've had it in cocktails, but that's my bad because I live in, you know, San Francisco, and they're way behind New York. You know, so I don't know. I think it's so cool. This is my new drink, guys. This is the year of
I don't
2025.
mean it to come out in the wrong way, but I'm glad to be here first.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Be gentle, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be the guy who like has tasted everything, you know. So
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty jealous. I know I recognize the label when you held it up. I know it's here somewhere, but I can't seem to find mine. But when I do, I'll definitely dig in and get a hold of it.
And I also I want to make sure the listeners understand what a difficult job we do. We taste so much delicious booze that sometimes we can't even find the samples that we're sent. And people say we don't work hard for the money we make on this show.
Yeah, pity me. I've got so much booze that I can't find the booze I'm looking for. I'm to be pitied. But let's talk a little bit more about your decision to take this ancestral spirit that is known to be, you know, bootlegged or moonshined or however we want to call it. You know, you prohibit something, you make it delicious, right? So people were still making it. How you came to the place where you thought I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do something no one else does in this category, which is barrel it and age it. And I can understand why they didn't maybe in the past when it was outlawed. You didn't want to have it hanging around in a visible barrel on your property, right? So they just stopped it right after the distillation and buried it in the ground in a glass bottle. So what made you decide, like, you know what, I want to get those nuanced flavors you mentioned earlier? You want to kind of season the Bacanora. What seasoning are you getting, and what made you make that decision?
Again, I didn't want to do it. My friend Ramon suggested it. And so he kept bugging me about it, and I kept to a point that I got fed up, I guess. And I said, okay, I'll come up with something. But I told him that I was gonna take my married time. So it took me quite a while, and just messing around at the distillery, trying different. I did a lot of sampling. I ordered like barrels that had white wine and red wine and made from different wood, like American oak and French oak, and now I learn more about Limousin oak. Is it Limousin oak? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I like a very specific kind of a French oak that it's that does beautiful things to cognac and such. And also I enjoy cognac very much. I enjoy it. I enjoy whiskey. I enjoy bourbon. I mean, I enjoy different mezcals and tequilas. I enjoy a good, elegant, straightforward drink. Something that is not very pretentious or anything. That's just right on spot. And with all that in mind, that was what I was trying to achieve, to have something pleasant, something that gives you those notes of the wood that the wood has to offer, but also that comes through and screams out Bacanora. And not to lose that spirit, that essence that it has. And it took me a while to come up with it, because it would be at times something that it was like tasted a lot like wood. The first repo I did, it was dark and it woodsy, and it was almost like a brandy. So it tasted too much like a brandy. So that was very pretentious. I didn't particularly like that. I mean, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad drink to drink, but it wasn't
Sure.
what I wanted. It wasn't the
Right.
result that I wanted. So I went ahead and worked a little bit more on that until I arrived to the repo that we have today. And I still go in and make notes and look for ways into improving it in a way that the alcoholic sensation is more in the is not the first thing that your palate perceives. It's just I like the palate to perceive the sweetness and the floral notes and the more herbaceous notes and all of that, and then you get the alcohol to warm your throat and your chest. And so I'm still working on doing a better job on that. But I've arrived to something that I really enjoy drinking and just hoping that everybody else enjoys it too. It started as a hobby, and I started making it for myself. So I still keep that in mind. I'm not after a crowd pleaser. I'm not adding anything to it. So it tastes sweeter and more people like it or anything like that. It's just something that the nature can give me. As I told somebody once, I'm sort of the translator of what nature wants to tell you, because the agaves, for example, for the silvestre, they grow for up to 7 years in the ground. So it's 7 years that tells a story. And
Yeah.
then for the blanco, those are 9 to 12-year-old agaves, and I mean 9 to 10-year-olds, because that's about when they shoot out the quiote, the main stock that they shoot out to give inflorescence and then make seeds. And then after that, the plant is gone; it'll die
Right.
and give way for the new seedlings to come up. And so I mean, we work with younger agave, not young. It's silly to do that because it doesn't have any sugars in it. But in the Silvestre, I want to express that youth, that brightness of a younger plant. And the for the for the blanco, I keep thinking in Spanish. Sorry about that.
That's
For
all
the
right.
blanco, it's roasted at a lower temperature for a longer period of time, so some of those sugars caramelize, and they play around with that floral essence that the agave gives naturally. And I find it very, very attractive to my palate. And it's something that I did for me. And I heard you say you do you. I was doing me, and it came to a point that uh, uh, people started looking for it, knocking on my door, calling me on the phone, and I would sell it from my house like a bootlegger at first.
That's great.
And then my family approached me, mom, dad, and they suggested that we could all pull in.
Suggested that you stop doing crimes and make an actual business out of it.
Well, they didn't put it quite like that, but
It's the undertone.
sort of the same thing. And so we all came together, got the resources, and started making it into a business. And now here we are, been at it for almost 15 years now, and it's been a ride. It's been a very enjoyable ride, by the way. I've enjoyed every second of it, and I still am. I still am. I feel like I quit working and retired already.
That's great.
That's amazing, man. I mean, as someone who's turned my last 4 hobbies into jobs, I'm there with you. It's great.
Yeah.
I do want to ask though, and this is something that worries me a little bit about the world of agave spirits.
Mhm.
Are you ever concerned that there's a bit of a bubble that maybe we're introducing a lot of different categories and asking a lot of the consumer? Because I think most people don't realize that like agave spirits are relatively new in the sort of overall cocktail pantheon. Like most cocktail books didn't even have a tequila section until the 90s. And mezcal was relatively unknown, like at this point, 20 years ago. So we've had this amazing meteoric rise, and with good reason, because I think these are some of the best tasting spirits in the world. But are you ever concerned that that the wave is going to crest, and as this world is getting so big and so populous, I was just sort of wondering, how do you make yourself known? How do you make sure that there's space on the shelf for a category within this larger umbrella that, compared to tequila and mezcal, is relatively unknown?
I strive for quality. And we never compromise on quality, and also I make it a point of being unique in a pleasant way. Some some um, some distillers want to be unique in ways that they make like funkier stuff that some are make things that taste like charred wood, like you mentioned before, and some others have their distillates sort of taste cheesy or like have a yogurt kind of vibe to it. Um, some others have even like a touch of acetone in them that I can detect. And that makes them unique. And there's people that like that. There's every one of them has their own fans. Um, I strongly believe that if I stick to making very good quality distillate and that it's really fun and pleasant to drink, we shouldn't be in much trouble in that department. There's gonna be mezcals and tequilas that can make millions and millions and millions of liters a year, and but it's that's gonna be probably your big crowd products like I mean or introductory products, if you will. I wouldn't know how to position them.
I think what
But
I think what you're saying here is, Rodrigo, is like, yeah, they might like, that might be the gateway, like say like a
Mhm,
bigger brand, but that's how people find,
Yeah.
once people get hooked on, a mezcal or a premium tequila, then they start digging deeper typically. These
yes.
days, there's so much information out there, you know, that, and it's people want to know. And to be honest, man, like I know it's been 15 years, as you said, but I see Bacanora
Mhm,
everywhere now. So it's cool that, like,
yeah.
I think agave spirits just in general are like, Greg has his own agave syrup company, and like there, it's just like
Awesome.
you're seeing this stuff everywhere, but it's so cool to see like how, almost more than any other spirit category, how people, consumers and like enthusiasts of cocktails, they want to know more and more and more, and they want to
Hmm.
know the deeper cuts, and so
Mhm,
but out of all the spirit categories, or just like, it's really agave spirits, I think, that are probably at the top of that, like, exploration,
mhm,
for your general consumer. People want to know the deeper story,
Right.
because it is really amazing, and there, it's an ancestral thing, and it's like, it's more than, you mentioned like cognac. It's like, it, we love cognac, right? But there's like a certain, and you mentioned Napa Valley Cab earlier, and it's like there's a certain kind of like lifestyle-y thing that comes along with those
Sure.
products.
mhm,
Mhm.
And to me, that's lifestyle, and agave spirits are life. Like, it's more about like the passion of like agriculture, and like the product that comes from like everyday life, and as you mentioned, like a special occasion, like a quinceañera or a wedding, or not for the 15-year-old girl, but for
The family, yeah.
for the family,
Well,
for
here is
family
for the
social.
18-year-olds and up. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the older siblings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I know we're like towards the end of the show here, and this has been really cool to learn about Bacanora, and I've tasted through all three of these several times on the show. I can tell you, Sother, I know which one you're gonna probably like the most. I mean, they're all awesome. I'll tell you, like I can and have. It's 9:00 in the morning, or now it's 10 in California. So I'm getting my day off to a great start here. Drinking a flight of Bacanora. Yeah. So I mean, they're great all on their own, but I just have all the wheels are turning with like cocktails, and but I have an idea, Sother, for when you finally find your samples that they sent to you.
I'll find them.
I have an idea of which one you're probably going to like the most, but you're going to like all of them. So anyway, they're just so cool, and I like as they open up in the glass, there's just like it's changing, and it's just every step of the way. It's been really cool.
It keeps evolving through when it breathes, it evolves and blooms, and it's just lovely. It's it falls into like people. I've heard that people are okay. I've tasted a bunch of tequilas. I found great ones, very awful ones, and then there's some certain aspects of mezcal that they sort of enjoy some, and then they don't enjoy a bunch of the more forward ones and stronger ones. And then we fall in that in between the tequila and the mezcal. But it's interesting enough that it draws you to another sip.
Yeah, and this reposado. Remember a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago, we had our buddy on from Maison Solis.
Oh yeah.
The on the nose, I'm getting so many of those characteristics just in the same way. So like it's just very, I don't know. It's people who are listening to the show, definitely check out Kilinga. It's an awesome line of products. Really cool Bacanora. I'm going back to the Silvestre right now. So yeah, I'm having a great morning here in California drinking this awesome Bacanora.
Sonora,
so thank you.
It's also just a great category to, maybe for our listener to discover, to dig into, something new for your back bar arsenal. I can remember my first sort of introduction to anything outside of tequila and mezcal was at Mayahuel, which is right down the street from Amor y Amargo, and I would go there, and they would pour these sorts of things on me, and I loved them. And then maybe I didn't dig into them enough because I was busy digging into Amaro. But now that I've got a little bit more time on my hands, I think I don't know. I think this is a great category to explore, and you've got a great product, according to my buddies here. So I definitely want to find that sample. It's got to be around here somewhere.
Yeah.
But really great having you on the show. Thanks for dedicating some time to us and educating us and our listener, I'm sure, to Bacanora in general. I was fascinated to hear that that it has this history of prohibition. It makes me think of like the mountain towns of the Deep South where moonshining was happening up in the mountains, as you said, similarly, and they had to hide that stuff, of course, because it was illegal. Yeah, and I'm glad, and the banditos, and I'm glad that it's made a resurgence and that you're at the tip of the spear. So again, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you guys for having me and inviting me to your show.
Thank you.
Amazing. Is there a social media or another spot where our listeners can follow along with your exploits and see what's coming next? Anything, any socials or other ventures you want to plug?
Well, at kilingabacanora.com. There's a online shop, and there's like news, and they put different announcements there. You can follow us there.
Awesome. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well.
The same on the Instagram as well.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that's linked. We'll make sure our listeners can follow along. But for now, that's going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. But if you want more of us, of Damon, Sother, and me, you can always become a regular on our Patreon page. Guys, I don't know if you knew this, but starting in January 2025, every podcast is going to be legally required to have a Patreon. Look, I don't make the rules, but I'm just saying we're getting ahead of the curve here. We are going to, and if you join ours, you get really cool stuff like being able to see what's going on. You could see, for example, Sother and Damon totally not getting that joke that I just made. I think they might still think that it's real, the Patreon thing. So you missed out on that reaction if you're not one of our regulars. But you also get cool stuff like guest recipes from all of our guests. You get access to bonus episodes. You get a free cocktail kit from Shaker and Spoon every month, and you will get our undying love and affection. So check it out. Links in the show notes, and be sure to tune in next week when our guest is going to be Jay from Drastic Measures, talking about a cool venture that he's doing where he's actually charging less on Sundays for people to come and drink at his bar. So we're going to talk to him about that and hear how it's going. But for now, until next time, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. Salud.
Cheers.
So you don't charm the devil with your rock.
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.